So, dear all, I would like to welcome you to the BEREC Stakeholder workshop as well. Let me briefly present the draft BEREC work program for next year and some of the hot topics that will continue to work on. I think that you already had a chance to look at the draft work program as we started consulting it right after its adoption at the last plenary. As you all know, the BEREC regulation says that we have to set out an annual work program. Basically, the work program of the following year has to be adopted by the plenary at the end of the preceding year. So for this work program, it will be by the end of this year. The reason why we run a public consultation of the draft work program is to give the opportunity to raise your opinion and to contribute to the work program. We believe that it helps to figure out which issues are of importance for the market and not only for us, national regulatory authorities. Several procedural steps were necessary to finally arrive at the current draft. The whole process started this spring with a comprehensive call for inputs from all NRAs. During the course of this spring and summer, an outline of the BEREC work program 2016 and a list of topics were discussed among the national regulators with the aim to balance and to prioritize the issues to be included in the work program. After some further discussions and rearranging the topics to be included in the work program, we finally agreed on the topics that you now find in the current draft. As you can see, the draft follows the structure of the BEREC strategy 2015-2017. This means that the work program for next year will continue and develop the activities that have been started in light of the three strategic pillars of BEREC's activities. That means promoting competition and investment, promoting the internal market, and empowering and protecting end users. Since BEREC is constantly working to improve its working methods and the quality and timeliness of its output, another key area of the work program is part so-called quality and operational efficiency. The main priorities for next year go along this structure and are grouped in three parts. A clear focus of BEREC's activities next year will be the upcoming review of the current European regulatory framework for electronic communications as an important part of the digital single market strategy and the forthcoming respective legislative proposals of the European Commission. Furthermore, our work will be significantly influenced and determined by the outcome of the telecom single market package. Various tasks are assigned to BEREC with regard to net neutrality and international roaming. In addition, BEREC will have to deliver its valuable input to some other important work streams, and of course, BEREC will continue to deliver its multi-annual work streams. With regard to the top priority of the telecoms review, let me tell you how we will organize everything. The work program explicitly addresses a number of topics which we consider crucial in the context of the framework review, such as oligopolies, OTT services, and several work streams regarding wholesale access products, spectrum, or the reform of the universal service. I picked two issues which we have been debated and raised diverging views in the industry, and I must say also among us national regulators. The first one concerns oligopolies. The reason why we started this assessment is because we can observe that some markets become more concentrated. This does not mean that such markets are per se of concern, but this may be the case if the market outcome is not competitive and would lead to lessening competition, which is why we regulate the telecom markets at all. As you all know, we consulted our report on oligopolies during the summer, and we will finalize it by the end of this year. But still, some questions remain and need to be further discussed, such as, is it necessary, is it really necessary to regulate non-competitive oligopolies? If that is the case, is there scope for adapting the framework? The other very hot topic is OTT services, where we started an assessment already this year, as you all know. This is in fact a hot topic as it involves companies which are not classic telecoms operators, but at the same time, these new companies offer services which are similar to telecom services or even may substitute them. We have tried to outline a definition of the several OTT services that are being offered, as well as to find a line to distinguish OTT services from telecom services. This, you all know, is part of the report which is currently under public consultation and will be finalized by the end of plenary 1 next year. However, several issues still remain under discussion, which we will feed into the review of the telecoms framework. The discussion about the framework review will have to include new trends arising from OTT services, as well as to find the right balance with regard to the scope of the framework. The second main priority for BEREC will be the follow-up with regard to the TSM. You are aware that the TSM regulation provides for BEREC to develop guidelines for the implementation of the obligations of NRAs related to the supervision, enforcement, and transparency measures for ensuring open internet access. The net neutrality guidelines have to be produced after consultation stakeholders and consulting stakeholders and in close cooperation with the European Commission, not later than 9 months after the regulation enters into the force. These are the preconditions. The same tasks are assigned to BEREC also with regard to international roaming. BEREC will have to deliver inputs on the draft implementation acts on fair use policy and the sustainability of the abolition of retail roaming surcharges. Additionally, BEREC will finalize its report on the wholesale roaming market. All these work streams will be crucial with a view to a consistent application of the new TSM rules in practice, but will have to be completed within a tight schedule. The schedule is in fact quite tight for international roaming. The Implementation Act on the weighted average of maximum MTR is scheduled for the end of this year. Then follows the Implementation Act on Fair Use Policy and Sustainability of Rome-like at-home services, which is due to the end of next year. Time forces us, and the European Commission is already begin to work on this issue. The schedule is even tighter for the wholesale market review, which we scheduled for plenary 1 next year. This BEREC report will be an assessment of the wholesale roaming market. It is linked to the request by the European Commission about wholesale market data, where we sent out a comprehensive questionnaire to stakeholders and NRAs. The Commission expects us to provide market data by the end of this year, which will feed into their wholesale market review due to spring next year. That means all ambitious timeframes. As we are talking about tight schedule, the issues of net neutrality is perfectly matching the scenery. As follow-up of the TSM agreement, BEREC has to develop guidelines for the implementation of net neutrality provisions only 9 months after the entry into force of the TSM agreement. According to the latest news, the key date of the entry into force will be Friday, the 13th of November. Therefore, the respective guidelines have to be in place already by August next year. In light of the complex issues involved, quite a challenge ahead of us. Against this background, the work has already started at BEREC level, and the consultation with stakeholders is foreseen for early 2016, where your expertise and perspectives will be highly appreciated. The draft work program includes further important work streams, such as the input to the European Commission's review of the recommendation on termination rates, the overview of the Article 7.7a cases of various workshops, for instance, on the implementation of the Cost Reduction Directive or an accessibility workshop. BEREC will, of course, continue to do its monitoring exercises and multi-annual work streams, especially the benchmarking of MTRs, FTRs, SMS, the International Roaming Benchmark Report, or regulatory accounting. So that is our, in brief, that is our work program. I want to thank you for your attention. I'm now looking forward to your comments and interventions by the invited stakeholders. Please have in mind we have an ambitious time frame. That means 5 minutes each. Thank you very much. And now I want to offer the floor to the first intervention by Mr. Beltra, please.
Hello. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, BEREC, once again for inviting BEOC, the European Consumer Organization, to intervene. The fact that we go first, I think, highlights the very genuine importance that you give to consumer issues, and we are thankful for that. Before I go into the concrete issues that we're going to be talking today, I have a very quick message that I would like to pass on to BEREC and the BEREC community. And that is that we, as consumer organizations, and by the way, BEOC is the largest consumer federation in Europe. We represent over 40 national consumer organizations in over 30 European countries. We would like to work closer with you. Enforcement is a very important priority for us, And we take that very seriously. We have already had, for example, one of the co-chairs of the end user working group speaking at one of our events on enforcement issues in telecom markets, and that worked out very well. And also we would like to help BEREC members work closer with our members on regulatory issues. We have done that very successfully in the energy market, and we think this could work as well in telecom markets. So we're open to talk about that. Now, on BEREC's work program, 2016 is such an important year for BEREC. There are so many consumer issues on the agenda, and I like the slogan. As I came in, I saw the slogan for today's conference is towards competitive and user-friendly European electronic communication markets. Keywords here, competition and user-friendly. I would say consumer-oriented, but that's okay. We will submit a few written comments to the work program, but just let me, because I know we don't have a lot of time each to speak, give you a few comments on key highlights of the work program that we think are important for us. The first one, of course, the review of the framework. We cannot stress it more clearly, and I think BEREC knows this very well. Competition has to continue to be the guiding principle. There is no trade-off there. We cannot have competition be traded off against investments, for example, or for sure not against consumer protection. On new issues that we are debating that we recognize are very important, like, for example, level playing field or level playing fields or layered playing fields, like some are saying, we are undergoing our own analysis to see what are the consumer issues there and what would be our approach to these issues. But one very important message from us, this cannot be a race to the bottom. We cannot end up with a new regulatory framework that includes now a better reflection of where are today's markets. That means a race to the bottom in consumer protection. So we need you all to bear that in mind. On the post-TSM era, BEREC has such a crucial role here as well. First of all, on net neutrality, I think it is no surprise to any stakeholder today here that we are not entirely satisfied with the final deal on the TSM. It's a step in the right direction, but both on roaming and on net neutrality is not good enough. And BEREC's role here is now crucial. First, with the guidelines on net neutrality. That is very important so that the rules that have been adopted or that are about to be finally adopted can actually be implemented in practice and mean an open and neutral internet for all consumers across Europe. And second, because it is also highlighted in the draft work program that you will look into issues beyond the last mile, into issues beyond the access market. And we've always said that that is very important. The TSM regulation does not look into that, and it makes good sense for us that BEREC does to analyze whether there are any issues that have to be tackled there. Second, on roaming. There are implementation acts that have to be adopted by the European Commission, but BEREC's role is key there. We need you to help the Commission develop further measures that mean that the agreed deal actually means the end of roaming for all consumers. And there's a date, there's 2017 for the abolition of retail roaming. Only 1 year to reform the wholesale market. We understand that's a big challenge, but then again, there BEREC can play a crucial role. And last but not least, of course, at the core of our focus is the Universal Service Directive. We will try and give all the ideas that we can come up with to try and help BEREC, the Commission, and the co-legislators to update the consumer protection framework in this market to reflect today's era. Thanks a lot, and good luck with everything.
Matthias,
Thank you very much. Now I want to offer the floor to Matthias, please.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Wilhelm, and dear colleagues from my former colleagues from BEREC. I'm always back again here in a way, but now I speak on behalf of Cable Europe. But I would like to make a statement which I found in the paper of the Nordic regulators, Göran and Thorstein, which I think it's quite good. You know, there is a sentence that said, to promote innovation and new solutions in the European digital economy, the Nordic regulators agree that the starting point should be reducing the regulatory burden where possible, rather than extending the present sector-specific regulation. I think that's a good sense, and I hope the Nordic regulators will have a common position for all of the regulators. And now I come immediately to a hot topic which Wilhelm mentioned, the ongoing discussion on oligopolies. We contributed to that. We had a study, we gave a lot of material on that, so I will not come to the details. But I think this discussion is a little bit controversial because to what was said by the Nordic regulators, because we would enlarge sector-specific regulation and not step back. And we also would go away from the general competition law. I think we are fine with general competition law if there is tacit collusion and if it's proven there is a possibility to regulate. But why going away from principles which are developed by the European Court of Justice in Impala, in Air Tours and others? And so I think they are sound, and we all know, Wilhelm, you know that in Germany we have to consult our competition authority. Every decision has to go there, that we still have the possibility to phase out. If we go now away only in the telecommunication sector from established principles of competition law, in our view, that would not be good. And also it would have the risk to have a permanent regulation in this area. Last point on this is, why do we focus on markets which have the best situation when it comes to broadband and investment and also prices and competition? You know, in these markets, I think a lot of European colleagues here around would be happy if they have a situation of those called oligopolies, because it's much better than if you have no service. So we can understand that there is a concern to go to rural areas or to have a specific policy for rural areas where there is no good service. But in these areas, we have the best service and the best supply we can find. Last point, I think we should not punish success stories. For example, the cable industry did a lot for reaching the broadband targets, even much above. We already offer 100 megabytes and 500 megabytes somewhere, much more than the targets are. So we are running before the needs of the consumers. And this should not be punished by changing the rules in the middle of the game. So our strong opinion is leave the rules like they are, stick to competition law principles, and then we are happy with that. Next point is universal service, and you mentioned connectivity targets. We are also a little bit cautious to set new targets, because the whole broadband development was market-driven. And if broadband targets would lead to a situation that a universal service is opened, which we avoided, by the way, in many member states when we always said the market forces will roll out. We have now state aid in rules, we have a lot of other things. Why should we have artificial other targets? And when a fund would be opened, it always ends up who is paying in the fund, who is getting out of money in the fund. Why only infrastructure carriers? Why not OTT, who would benefit also? So I think it's better to trust the market forces, and we don't see a need for additional targets above the targets we already have. Last point on my side would be quality of measure. Wilhelm mentioned it. It's part of the net neutrality discussion that there should be an oversight role of BEREC to develop these guidelines. How do we measure quality of service? And coming back also to consumer organizations, we have to talk about what do we really want to measure, how do we measure, and what is the best way to do that. And I think there is a danger that things could be over-prescriptive because a lot of members of us and also of suppliers, they already have an own interest to deliver good quality. The European Commission, for example, had a SAMNO study which shows, by the way, that the cable companies are always on top in many of the areas. So I think we should work close together to develop a system which is sound, and BEREC should also reflect the opportunity to have a co-regulation on that. Because I think an oversight of existing measurements might be better than having an ambitious target to have a unified system all over Europe. I think the perfect can be sometimes the enemy of the good. And we all know that, that we have not enough staff and not enough headcount to do everything in detail. But I assure you, and I assure BEREC, that we have an own interest to deliver good quality, because that's a source for competition and for win customers. Thanks for your attention.
Yes, I think it's always inspiring when we get the messages from Matthias, and we will analyze it very carefully. Now I want to give the opportunity to Mr. Alexandre de Streel.
Okay, Good morning to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. Here I am representing CER, which is a think tank based in Brussels for better regulation in the network industry. We have 41 members from regulators, operators, and academics. And we are running a project now that I am directing with Pierre Larouche on a good regulatory framework for the digital union, which is adapted for the app economy and the digital and the internet society. So we will present the project at the end of January next year, but already at this stage, I think I can make 5 or 6 points. I have 5 minutes, but I will try to make very quickly. So the first point is that clearly there is an increase of connectivity needs, and that is also mentioned very well in the different in the plan of BEREC. So that for us means that you need to have an investment check for behind every regulatory decision. And it's very important that every time you check what can be the effect of investment of the decision. Now, on the question of investment and competition, we know it's a difficult issue. CER has produced recently a study on the 4-to-3 consolidation in the mobile, showing that there is a kind of a trade-off between price and investment. But we will be very interested to see what BEREC will come with this post-merger study, because I think this is the thing we need more, those kind of post-fact studies, and that is a very interesting point. Second point is that clearly mobile data is will be key more than ever, so therefore we cannot miss the 5G evolution. Third point is that we are moving from a silo to layers in an extended value chain, so that should be taken into account in the regulation. That means to look at OTT, obviously, but that also means to understand how privacy works, because clearly personal data is the new oil in this extended value chain, and we need to understand better the economic model behind the use of personal data. Fourth point is that clearly market and technology continue to evolve very rapidly and in an unpredictable way, so that makes the work of regulator obviously very difficult, but that means that a regulation should continue to be based on principle. I think that is a good thing that we have in the framework and that we should not change in the future. That means based on economic analysis, that means based on technology neutrality. We should keep those basic principles that we had before. Fifth point is that clearly we see more differentiation between member states and within the member states themselves. So we think that the subsidiarity here should very forcefully be applied, and that, for instance, for local infrastructure, we are not sure that we need a big European harmonization. It needs to be left to the member states and the regulator to decide how they deal with local infrastructure. On the other hand, for cross-border services, clearly there, harmonization, or at least one-stop shopping, the home country control, is needed. And the last point is on the oligopolies. Clearly, we are evolving from monopolies to oligopolies. We think there that the criteria for regulation should be bottleneck. Is there a bottleneck? If yes, then you intervene. If not, then you have a lot of horizontal law. You have competition law, you have privacy law, you have consumer protection, so we don't see any need necessarily to go further. No, that is where our reflection here are today. Sorry, we will end up with a full report at the end of January, and we hope to present to BEREC when it's finished. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much. And now I want to offer the floor to Mrs., I hope the pronunciation is now correct, Ines Nolasco. I hope this is, I'm not familiar with Spanish. Or
it's correct. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes. So on behalf of ECTA, I would like to thank BEREC for the invitation, opportunity to attend and speak at the stakeholder events, and commend BEREC's open dialogue with stakeholders. BEREC has a key role in ensuring the consistent application of the regulatory framework, and we very much welcome the enhanced and continued support for nurturing competition in our markets. Your program is ambitious and very comprehensive. We're happy to be able to contribute to its refinements, which we will do in writing. We'd just like to mention 3 key points. First, that competition delivers for all. We've seen that competition in legacy broadband has brought not only network investments, but only the best outcomes for consumers and also for the sector, with increasing revenues on broadband. So what we have seen is that fixed broadband product components in quality have massively increased. We have more products included in a specific package. We have lower prices. And at the same time, what this has led to is exponentially increased in broadband penetration. So we've gone from 30% in 30% in 2005 to 73% in 2014. And despite the fact that unit prices have gone down, the sector has benefited from increased revenues from 19 billion in 2005 to 46 billion in 2014. So what we've seen is that competition enabled by access regulation has been a win-win for all, for end users and also for the sector. So my second key message is, and as has been mentioned before, there is no trade-off between competition and investment. What we see is that, and has been recognized in the DSM strategy and in several speeches, recent speeches by commissioners, is that competition is the best driver of investment. Investments in NGA networks are ongoing. Today we have 68% of NGA coverage. We foresee by 2020, 80% FTTX coverage. And the good news is that we are not lagging behind other countries such as the US on FTTH and FTTB. So we have 19% coverage, while the US has 17%. One point which is important to make is that investment is not an end in itself, but it's a means to an end. So we want to have a connected society, a connected economy. And to do so, we need to have take-up of these high-speed services over these new networks. So this brings me to my third point, which is in NGA, competition needs a boost because fostering take-up is needed. The main problem today with NGA markets is twofold. NGA take-up is increasing very slowly, and incumbents still retain very high market shares, both at retail and at wholesale level. What we see is that the competitors have played a key role in driving take-up. So they have consistently led on speeds, offered better products, and they have also, when offering the same products or even better, charged lower prices. So regulation which has enabled competition has had and continues to have a key role in fostering demand and take-up. So if we want the same success story as we have had in legacy broadband be transferred to an NGA setting, we must make sure that regulation ensures competition so that competition can drive take-up and demand. Some say that the altnets are free-riding, that they do not invest, that the ladder of investment has failed, that they are just resellers. This is plainly not true. What we see is that enabled by regulation, in particular local loop unbundling, the altnets have made broadband a mass market. They have more than 40 million lines at EU level. They have also kickstarted FTTH and FTTB deployments. See Fastweb in Italy, see the case of Free in France, in many EU member states. And along with cable operators, they have delivered fantastic new services and bundles, which in turn have led the incumbents with no alternative but to catch up. So they do invest, they offer very fantastic offers, but we have to realize one thing. The transition from copper to fiber has not changed a fundamental principle, which is economic bottlenecks remain in the last mile. So whereas in some cases, duplication of networks is feasible and desirable, this is not in all cases. So here, what we see is that access regulation is key. And this fundamental principle has not changed with the transition to NGA, with the development of OTT services, and is not expected to be changed with virtualization of networks. So we need appropriate, fit-for-purpose and pro-competitive wholesale access remedies on NGA. And physical access is key. We don't want second-class products which do not allow the alternative operators to innovate as they have done in a legacy world. We also need business-grade products to be offered, and we welcome BEREC's specific attention to business users in its program. On mobile, just a short word to say that we need pro-competitive spectrum auction rules so that we can ensure pro-competitive, viable, competitive market structures. So, all in all, we welcome very much BEREC's involvement in the ongoing review. We urge BEREC to ensure that promoting competition remains the primary objective of regulatory framework, and the thrust, the pro-competitive thrust of the framework is strengthened. We very much welcome your work on the oligopolies. NRAs must be equipped with the tools to remedy uncompetitive outcomes of oligopolistic, and namely fixed duopolistic market structures, and options such as the one you have put forth in your report should be thoroughly explored and tested. Finally, your involvement in the Article 7 and 7A cases is very much commended. The system of checks and balances must be retained. So all in all, we'd like to thank BEREC for the very good work which you have done, and ask BEREC to ensure that true competitive dynamics unfolds in an NGO world. Thank you very much.
Ja, nächste sitzt jetzt wieder auf Tisch 3.
Thank you very much for those very precise comments. And then I want to give the opportunity to Mr. Francesco Versace to give us his view. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all. I am Francesco Versace, representing ETNO today. I would like to start by commending very much BEREC for this forum and all the work that it's doing in order to open up to stakeholders and to have open and public and constructive discussions on all the work streams that is engaging in. And so we very much appreciate being here and being able to speak here today. The work program, which is the focus today, is, as Ines was saying, quite comprehensive and ambitious. And it's really very much informed by the whole work on the DSM strategy, which the Commission is engaging in. So in the interest of time, I would like to focus on 3 main points today and leave the rest of our comments, which will be many, to the written consultations. As ETNO, I cannot help by starting with the first point, which is infrastructure regulation. As it was said before, investment is not the end, but it's a necessary means to achieve the DSM strategy and its goals. And as you know, what we advocate for is an environment in which, a regulatory environment in which investment incentives are maximized. And we think that this should be at the core of any reflection on the future framework review. The DSM strategy, in particular its staff working document, have set out some very interesting questions in this respect. But first of all, they've clearly acknowledged that there is an investment gap to reach the digital agenda targets. And here we're talking about the current targets, not to mention what would happen, what would be needed if the targets were revised upwards. So the key policy issue is to bridge this investment gap, both through better mobile regulation and through better fixed regulation. Let me clarify what I intend here. I think that the key question that we should respond here is another question that's been raised in the DSM strategy. Is the current system providing the right incentives to invest in the NGA environment? Is current regulation on access providing the right incentives, or has it rather provided a system, a framework, in which a wait-and-see approach by operators is incentivized? This is a key question that we should answer to. We have recently published a report done by Boston Consulting Group, which indicates that, first of all, this investment gap could be even larger, up to 105 billion euros, and which provides some recommendations on how to embark in a pro-investment path for the new regulation. But I would like to conclude this point to refer to a very interesting read, a paper which was published by Bruegel some days ago, on why Europe is lagging behind on NGA networks, and why the regulation for NGA, the NGA environment should change with regard to what was done for the copper environment. And I think I will just leave you with the key message of this report, which I encourage all of you to read, which is that clearly the new regulation should be radically simplified and should become radically less strict than it is today. My second point, and here I refer specifically to the ongoing consultation on OTTs, is on OTT services and regulation. I think that the draft report really starts from the right question. The current definitions of ECS services with respect to OTT services are becoming more and more blurred. And this is posing the question of how to create new definitions and a new framework which really guarantees fair competition across the value chain. So this is a great starting point, I think. On the consequences that this entails, as you know, we are in the past and all more today, encouraging policymakers and regulators to remove more and more sector-specific regulations and replace it with horizontal regulation when same services are provided. So the same rules should be abided by the same services in general. Does this mean more regulation for all? No, not at all. It means understanding the dynamics of the sector, of the value chain, and providing the right regulatory conditions for all consumers and for all operators, all providers, in fields such as data privacy, transparency, emergency calls, and so on. My final point is on the part of the work program which is telling how BEREC intends also to expand its remit to other areas. For example, IoT, virtualization of networks, SDN. We think this is all very interesting work streams. I have one point to make here, since these are all developments which are fast changing, and on which the future is uncertain because the market is changing so fast. We think that in these cases, the right level of regulation is always the lightest possible, and that as Alexandre was saying before, there should be for all future regulatory operations an investment check before embarking into any regulatory activity. And with this, I again reiterate my thanks to BEREC for the kind invitation, particularly to Professor Baros and to Dr. Eschweiler, and thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. And now I want to offer the floor to Mr. Edgar Aker.
Thank you. First, thanks to BEREC and to Kevin O'Brien in particular for the opportunity to give the views of the Fibre-to-the-Home Council here today. Now, there's always a risk in a title like the Fibre-to-the-Home Council that people think that we are a single issue group with a very narrow technology view. Nothing could be further than the truth. We are looking very broadly into social and economical issues as driver of demand. We look at other technologies in detail as complementary, as customers, as rivals, and we take a fundamentally economical approach rather than a technology approach to the promotion of European digital marketers. But make no mistake, as a Fibre-to-the-Home Council Europe, we promote Fibre-to-the-Home and we make no apologies about it. But we do so because we think we can deliver enormous benefits to those that have adopted technology. We view our infrastructure, our telecom network infrastructure, as an ecosystem. And as in many ecosystems, there is a collaboration, dependency, interdependency, and a richness of interaction. We see fiber as the element that underpins the technology network infrastructure ecosystem. I will limit my remarks today to two areas: promotion of competition and investment, and the review of the framework. With regards of the promotion of the competition and investment, like previous speakers, I make the same observation. There is no trade-off between the competition and investment. But this cliché should not blind us from the evidence of how different forms of competition, service-based, infrastructure-based, have an impact on each other. A completely equal access regime based on virtual remedies with a guaranteed margin effectively propose that no one will compete on network differentiation and seek a first mover advantage. While cable networks have created a string of competition, the telco operators tend to invest in very strategic just to meet the current demand. At the Fibre-to-the-Home Council, we have seen the greatest investments at the strongest competition dynamics where NRAs have actively pursued fiber-to-the-home and fiber-to-the-building deployments. We see in Sweden and in Lithuania, in Portugal, Spain, and in France, they all achieved a level of infrastructure competition which is ahead of other European countries. So I would like to ask the NRAs in BEREC to look and learn from each other. And our analysis suggests that there needs to be a deliberate policy to pursue fiber-to-the-home. Virtual access remedies of fiber-to-the-home were either not available or were greatly curtailed. In addition, each country took care to ensure that the cost of deployment were minimized through sharing of expensive passive infrastructure and avoid duplication of those passive network elements. But let me be realistic. Competition network deployment won't happen everywhere. And a way to ensure rollout in more expensive rural areas will not have to sit beside the market-driven approach. Good access in all its forms will be required in those areas as consumers must have access to the deepest form of competition available. However, in lower cost urban areas, we believe that a form of competition can be infrastructure-based and that the benefits for the consumers will be very, very high. Under the heading of competition and investment, therefore, I would like to conclude by asking BEREC to recognize the trade-off between the different forms of regulatory access granted and the stress of importance of a thorough and effective implementation of the cost reduction directive and further cost reduction measures. My second topic touches our concerns in the upcoming review of the regulatory framework. While my earlier comments are absolutely relevant and even central in this context, I will not repeat myself. I will touch on another issue, that is the issue of technology neutrality and its treatment. A problem that the Fibre-to-the-Home Council perceived is something that might be called false technology neutrality. There are targets and speeds are selected so as to ensure that as many technologies are included in a policy as possible. A truly technology-neutral approach would simply select the most likely future requirements across all parameters and let the technologies fall as they may. From an economical perspective, there is no access market in Europe that does not demonstrate market failure. And in this instance, I would like to demonstrate that's demonstrated by the presence of persistent dominance, or SMP. The presence of this market failure means that the specialist regulator, you, the members of BEREC, exists to require a form access that is granted. Specialist regulators also set the price for such access. This is done so that the dominant entities cannot foreclose or limit the market. Yet, although dominant, firms do not have the choice about whom to grant access or on what terms. What it comes to technology choice, is presumed that an optimal choice will be chosen. This approach does not make sense to us. Decisions on technology choice can be just as strategic as pricing or the form of access. It is sometimes, to clarify the forthcoming review. I note that the existing provisions on the technology neutrality support the promotion of superior technologies. So we understand that. It's just that we have chosen, we as a group, has chosen to ignore it at this moment. So finally, let me conclude by committing the resources of the Fibre-to-the-Home Council Europe to support the work of BEREC, and much appreciated for you to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I want to give the opportunity to Mr. Danielle Pataki. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's, as Matthias, I'm kind of part of the alumni here as well, so so really good to be back. And maybe another comment for Guillermo. Always consumer comes first, but I think it's only alphabetical order, so that's why they started with you. Just a few words. I'm representing GSMA. I'm Vice President for Regulation, overseeing globally regulation. And a few words for GSMA, for some of you who might not know. So GSMA is more than telco. So we have 250 players in the ecosystem. We are also more than Europe, so this is a global organization with around 800 members. And also we are more than the policy shop. So most of you have been in Barcelona in the big event, so we hope that we will meet you there again next year as well. And GSMA does a lot of market development programs as well. So on the work program, because I know that time is tight. So first of all, I would like to congratulate to BEREC. I think it's a very intense and quite extensive work program, very structured. So I wished my former colleague Annegret really good luck for next year if you want to achieve all of this. So very ambitious, but we try to help you on this. The other, for the very positive note as well, that what I've seen, and this is to show that I read it, so the 1.2 and 1.3 items on the work program, when you think about the future challenges, I think this is really essential, because as many of us knows, when this review will come into force, it will be 2020, and the whole industry will look very differently. So it's really high time to think about not only the problem of the past, of the problem of the present, but the problem of the next future. Let me concentrate on your work program on one thing because of the time, because we will do our input as well on the review, which is maybe the most important for everyone sitting here. And if you would have only one message from me today, that would be that instead of the review, I really think, or we really think that it has to be a rethink. So if I turn back time, like 7 years ago, when we were, with some of you here, we were working on the review from the regulator side, and we had a slogan which was evolution, not revolution. So I think that was fit for purpose, and then the whole regulatory package was fit for purpose, but as it, many of the people know here, and it has been said many times, the world has changed, so we really think that it has to be a rethink this time. And if you would do a rethink, let me offer you just a few principles from GSMA point of view. One of the principles is what I would call objective-driven, and Matthias stole my show a bit, but let me do a bit the same thing, because it's not the same quote, but I wanted to make the same quote from the same paper. It says, "At the beginning of the framework review, it is thus essential to take enough time to discuss the vision, the objectives, and the obstacles reaching the objective. Only then it is possible to agree on measures." So this is, I think, it's not my words, it's the word of the regulators. So I think it's really good to have a stakeholder meeting like this, but many of my colleagues, we tend to jump into the measures, but I think it would be really essential to discuss what is the vision for Europe and what are the objectives. So this would be, already, but I wanted to emphasize this. The second one, which is more difficult, other than objective-driven, what I would call a clean slate approach. So if you have to rethink, then you have to get rid of a load of legacy. And I was a regulator myself. I worked in public policy, in administration. It's a very difficult task. How you can get rid of all the legacy, what you think is not necessary. So I think that's a big challenge, but I think that's one of the second principle people have to take into account. And the third one and the last one, which many people touched upon, which I would call dynamic, which is, more and more we see that ex post measures might be more fit for purpose than ex ante measures. So this comes again with a challenge. So how you would make a new framework which is fit for purpose, so which is predictable, but also flexible enough because all the changes is coming. So we don't have the magic ball, but we will try to help you on this. And of course, if you talk about ex post and ex ante, I saw something which is not in the work program other than the vision, so I don't know, that would be a question whether you would do something on the vision side in the work program or this is somewhere else. One thing I haven't seen is all about the institutions, because that's the elephant in the room, nobody has mentioned before. So if it's the whole thing, you know, will be a rethink, so what is the role of BEREC in this? So what, from the industry side, I think what I have to emphasize is that for us, good policy comes first, and institutions come second. So if we would all together find a good policy, then for us, you know, institution is secondary. And the second one as well, but you know, it's maybe because of my past, but I really believe in this, that BEREC will surely have a strong role, whatever construction will come. And the last point, because this was all for you, what is for us, because we have to do our homework as well. So our homework, we are doing as many of the people here as well as GSMA, so we are develop our thinking about what should be next. We hope to present it soon, hopefully in Barcelona. And my last note, what I would like to leave you with, because there are so many meetings not only in Europe, because we are living in a bigger world, in globally. There were CEO meetings in the industry in Cape Town. There was currently in my hometown, there was in Budapest ITU meetings in telecom. And there was one quote which I want to use. One of the CEOs said that it would be really good to go from an ecosystem to an ecosystem. So I think that's a really good one to stop with. And what I can just offer from the industry side, I think there's a willingness to come from to leave the ecosystem and arrive to the ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I want to give the opportunity for some remarks to Mrs. Danielle Jacobs.
Good morning to you all. I'm Danielle Jacobs from INTUG. INTUG is the International Telecommunications User Group, and we represent business users. So our members are banks, retail companies, industry, those kind of users. It's very difficult just to talk in 5 minutes and to give all these essential points because we really have a lot of worries. So I limit myself to 3 points. First of all, on the Internet of Things, we're very pleased that BEREC is taking this very, very serious because we see a lot of attention for the Internet of Things within the companies. Of course, there needs to be work done on standards, etc. But what is for us very crucial is that it is possible for machine-to-machine communications that you can change your mobile operator without having to change the SIM card physically. It is too difficult if the machines are on the road or on chips or whatever to collect them again to have a change of the physical card. So that's a very important point. And I also hope BEREC can work there together with the GSM Association. Another point is, as almost all previous speakers mentioned, is competition. We need competition, we are not there yet, and we need a good internal market. So very happy to see that in the working plan of BEREC, internal market stays very important, also in the telecom single market file, of course. But we still have to puzzle together different prices, different players, different approaches in different countries. So it's very difficult for international companies to puzzle your international network services or your mobile policy together. So that's an important point as well. On net neutrality, we can be short. For net neutrality, we are in favor of net neutrality, of course, but we would like to stress the importance for business users to have service level agreements. So for the net neutrality, we hope that the decisions that will be taken do not prevent businesses to have service level agreements, because with the cloud access, the cloud software, this is very, very important. There is a part in the BEREC working program on empowering the users, and under users I also understand business users. And I want to mention a very new point, because it was said before, new issues need to be taken care of as well. Companies these days, they are really built on software. Using their software, the way they can use software is very, very important to unleash the potential of the digital economy. What we see now is that there's a lot of unease within companies and also within public institutions, large companies, small companies, international companies, national companies, on the use of software, software licenses. The contracts, the metrics, they are much too complicated, and there needs something to be done. Now, you probably wonder, why is this a point for BEREC? Software is not really our thing. Well, it is, because if you want to empower the users, and we see the movements for cloud software, which is really now at a turning point. It's really the moment to do something about it. And what we can offer there, we made a kind of proposal for a code of conduct for software suppliers to really take away the barriers before they are created. With this, I would like to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jacobs. And now, last but not least, I want to offer the floor to Monsieur Jacques Bonifay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, BEREC, to give a share of voice to the MVNOs. Actually, MVNOs represent about 10% of the European market, so we think we are a little bit significant on the market. MVNOs is about innovation and differentiations, because if we don't innovate and if we don't differentiate, we basically are dying. So we have no choice but to innovate. And I would even argue that we innovate more than MNOs because we don't have a choice. We do it not only on the consumer segment, but we also do it on the SME segment to bring a more competitivity to the SMEs and to the enterprise. We bring all kind of innovation around the fixed mobile convergence, mobile payment, new embedded data-only connectivity solutions, etc., etc. Going on the roaming, first I would like to point out that MVNOs have been the first to bring low-cost roaming solutions on the market, and that started 15 years ago. On roaming free, the last wholesale cap that we had in July 2014 has been quite efficient to allow some MVNOs and some MNOs to reduce the price on the market and to bring some kind of roaming like at home offer, especially for voice and SMS, not quite on data. So it was a quite simple measure, the wholesale cap, and that has been quite efficient. Now, if we look at the objectives to bring roaming like at home everywhere and basically to abolish roaming, there is no way that MVNOs can do it without reducing the wholesale cap. It's just not possible. You cannot ask players on the market to play with no gross margin or even negative gross margin, especially I'm thinking on data. So it's going to work only if we reduce the wholesale cap. And that's pure analytic thinking here. Another topic, another things which is important is the MTR. In Europe, you got plenty of different voice and SMS MTR across Europe, which make it very difficult to bring an offer which is sustainable in the roaming aspect. So that needs to be harmonized, and we don't see why MTR are not the same throughout Europe for voice and SMS. That should be simplified. My last point would be about the mergers. We see lots of mergers on MNO. And what is interesting for us is the wholesale access. We don't want mergers to reduce wholesale access for MVNOs. So we have seen that there is some remedies which give some, I would say maybe some more short-term access to MVNOs, and we are also interested in long-term access. We want to be sure that in 3 or 4 years from now, if we have a new kind of MVNOs coming with very innovative ideas around data, with the development of 4G or with the emergence of 5G. We want to be sure that those new MVNOs can enter the market. So we don't want to have solutions which bring some kind of market share on the short term to MVNOs with no possibility for newcomer to come into the market. And we start to see that a little bit in Europe. That's what we are a little bit afraid of. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have to thank you. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, these all have been very interesting comments. It is a lot of food for thought for us. We will analyze that very carefully, but now there is the opportunity for called ad hoc interventions, including tweets from stakeholders. So it's now up to Alejandra, I'm in your hands, to help me a little bit. Are there?
No, okay, gibt keine.
There are no tweets, okay. Then I would then propose to have then ad hoc interventions. There is something from Deutsche Telekom, I think. So please go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Eschweiler, colleagues. As Deutsche Telekom, first we also want to thank for the invitation, for opening it up for this stakeholder forum for individual companies. 2016, it was mentioned before, will be a key year, and it will be mainly because of the framework review, the first fundamental review for 13 years, I think. And so our comments will focus on the framework review, and one word on roaming, reacting to what has been said before. On the framework review, BEREC will play a key role, perhaps the most important role next to the three institutions involved in the decision-making process. We believe it's important that BEREC exercises this role in a balanced, in a responsible way, to contribute to a pro-investment framework that ensures enhanced investment in infrastructures, as colleagues have pointed out, but also sustainable competition. For us, a fundamental review of the framework is important in the sense that we need to move from intrusive ex-ante intervention by sector regulators to a monitoring of the market by sector regulators, to not lose the expertise of all those here in the room representing BEREC members, but at the same time giving more flexibility for commercial agreements on wholesale conditions and prices. At the same time, elements of the current framework need to be stable, and one of them is technology neutrality, addressed by the FTTH Council, perhaps coming from a slightly different angle. We think that this is a key principle in access regulation, and for us, as Tim Höttges pointed out this week at ETNO FT, the consumer demand should clearly guide our investment decisions. And the consumer doesn't care about technology, we all know this, and consumer demand evolves gradually. This is not a statement against fiber-to-the-home. I think this is future-proof and superior technology, clearly. But we have very important contributions to make over the next month and years to the competitiveness of European industry and economy by investing in intermediate technologies as well. So BEREC's, the plea to BEREC, please ensure that technology neutrality is respected here. The third and last point on the review I wanted to make is around the threshold for intervention. Would like to echo what Matthias Kurth has said earlier. The perception of BEREC's role in this process will of course also depend on what type of substantive issues you bring forward. And on the oligopoly question, we believe this raises a lot of legal uncertainty. It's a debate we do not need at this stage, in our view. We have, over the years, been informed that the framework has built-in deregulation. We came to the Commission to discuss regulation, and we were always ensured, wait and see. Over time, when SMP will cease to exist, markets will be deregulated. We don't think that at this stage saying, well, hold on a minute, we will not let go of these markets, we continue to regulate, that this is a positive signal to investors. It's clearly the opposite, and we do ask you to reconsider your positions on this aspect. Final word on roaming. Also here, a big responsibility of regulators, and I want to commend BEREC for the work done on roaming, because this has very much contributed to a matter-of-fact discussion on the TSM. So clearly BEREC played a positive role. Please continue to do so and ensure that there's no room for arbitrage models that would negatively affect national markets, would distort competition on national markets, but ensure that there will be scope for commercial agreements on the wholesale side, also for commercial conditions to prevent this arbitrage. Key process. Those were main points from our side. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for that statement. Are there any interventions from the audience? Please introduce yourself if you want to make an intervention. All problems are clearer or not clearer? So, okay, then I would suggest that we now wait for Commissioner Oettinger. I think Fatima and Kevin are waiting for him, so that gives us the opportunity once again to thank you all for this great debate. We got an impression of the temperature in the room, and that will help us a lot.
Und wir warten auf die Comments.
Yeah, we wait for your comments. We
deadline,
get your written comments. That's clear that we are in the consultation process. That's absolutely clear. We will analyze it, what you will present to us, and it has been very helpful in this sense. I want to thank you all, and now we come to the highlight, to the statement of Commissioner Oettinger, and I would please, I would be pleased that you stay in the room and not go outside now. That would be, it's a question of courtesy.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'd just like to say a very quick word to say how delighted we are to have today Commissioner Oettinger with us. And, you know, this is also a very important moment because European Commission is also part of our stakeholders, and it's very important for us to have the opportunity to share and to listen also to the views of the Commissioner Oettinger. So thank you so much for coming, and please, I will give the floor to you, Commissioner.
Dear President, Ms. Bauer, dear Mr. Eschweiler, dear Mr. O'Brien, dear BEREC members, dear stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be able to address you today as we will have to make important policy choices in the very near future. We just launched a series of consultations with stakeholders, but such a direct interaction as today is much appreciated, and I hope we can all take something useful and insightful from today's meeting. Logically, your discussion today relates very much to the regulatory challenges in the telecoms world. This is BEREC's remit. And the work you are envisaging for 2016, following up on the TSM legislation, is very important for the implementation and the practical success of this legislation on the ground. However, as is also clear from your agenda for today, the digital single market strategy that the Commission outlined and its vision for a digital union is not only about telecoms. The stakes are much higher. This is not about one sector, telecoms. It's about how digital technology can boost all economic sectors if we take advantage of the single market. It's very positive that you discuss these wider issues here today as well. Naturally, we have to have a competitive telecoms market which invests in high-capacity networks. In fact, this is crucial because at the end of the day, the role of the telecom sector he has to play in providing connectivity is that one of an enabler for all others. My vision of a digital union is to maximize the positive impacts of digital technologies in creating jobs and growth, while protecting competition and providing business and consumers with quality services. What ties together telecoms and all other economic sectors? First of all, connectivity. The telecoms regulatory framework devised in 2002 and revised in 2009 dealt with vertical integration in the market. But above all, it was designed for the voice telephony world. The world has changed a lot since then. So have the needs of citizens and businesses. Connectivity is today crucial, as almost all activities in our economy depend on it, from smart homes, e-health and m-health services, to entertainment, cars and transport, agriculture and many others. Modern health applications, for example, can improve the lives of medical patients and help keeping healthcare costs in check. But these applications rely crucially on adequate mobile and fixed telecoms infrastructure. Society will thus benefit from the advances of technologies such as 5G development. Connectivity and innovations in mobility will enable connected cars. Next example. With higher levels of automation, business opportunities expand. Private and professional drivers can use their in-vehicle time to connect to the wider internet. This potentially increases productivity of professional drivers, as well as the value of time spent in cars for private drivers. The use of vehicles with functionalities which depend on digital technologies has to be safe throughout Europe, governed by the same legal framework and using interoperable solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, we are yet to answer many pertinent questions, such as will real-time digital maps function everywhere? Are the data that a car needs available and accessible at any time and at any place? Are the data secure? And of course, the fundamental question, who owns the data and who can use them and under what conditions? In order to have automated vehicles connected continuously, the coverage of broadband networks along corridors between cities need to be secured. This might mean covering less densely populated areas as well, rural areas, areas that are not always well served by either fixed or mobile technologies. The digitization of European industry generally is most important, given our current strength in industry and given that our future competitiveness and welfare will depend on whether we can manage this process well. The growth potential for many economic sectors is large, including for telecoms, if we get the basics right. But whatever example we take, the common theme that cuts through is connectivity. Access to high-speed broadband, also in rural areas, is a precondition for the deployment of innovative solutions in the sectors mentioned: health, transport, energy, education, and so on. Actions under the digital single market strategy are meant to leverage digitalization in different economic and social sectors. However, most digital solutions do not yet benefit from the large potential of the internal EU market and have not been deployed at large scale. The outlined opportunities will depend on adequate connectivity to be available everywhere and for everyone. The current rules governing the telecom sector, devised for the voice communication age, should be adapted to the needs of ubiquitous connectivity for today and for the near future. The speeds that were sufficient back in 2002 are no longer relevant. And I'm not mainly talking about someone being able to watch a high-definition video online. This is also important for our media and creative industries. However, potential of improved manufacturing processes, the growth of the economy, and the new responses we can find to societal challenges show that much more is at stake. Thus, access to high-speed connectivity has become essential for industries and consumers. It's a main challenge for to be competitive in a global market. And the quality of connectivity is also becoming increasingly important. In order to reap the full benefits of the digital economy, Europe needs a competitive telecoms sector which invests in high-performing networks. This is a prerequisite. Ladies and gentlemen, according to our estimates of the broadband gap, Europe needs 35 billion euro to reach the target of 100% coverage at 30 megabytes speed and 90 up to 100 billion euro to enable 100 megabytes speed by 50% of household. And these are our targets just for 2020. The requirements will not stop there. For the moment, we are checking what should be our ambition for 2025. And we need more input from your side and from our industries and from research people for to invest just in time into the right dimension. So we are regarding the review of the telecoms regulatory framework. Our consultation is focusing at creating the right conditions for digital networks and services. It has become imperative to build a framework review on an overall vision of connectivity, taking into account current and future needs of citizens, businesses, and the public sector. The challenge is to deliver consistent regulatory conditions for a true single market. In areas where competition is driving infrastructure investment, we should focus access regulation on real bottlenecks, simplifying it and making it in practical terms more consistent across countries. We must make investments in highest capacity networks rewarding. Adjustments to the current rules are probably necessary to increase the incentives to invest in these networks for both incumbents and access seekers. We need to make sure that capital works efficiently to achieve our connectivity aspirations. Of course, regulation needs to take into account the state of technological development of networks and the number of networks available in a given area. If someone takes the risk to build a future-proof infrastructure, moving ahead of short-term demand, that risk needs to be rewarded. If such a network is built to gain a technological advantage, to differentiate the investor from others, then the most direct way to reward the investor is to let him use that comparative advantage in competition with others. Of course, we would like every market player to have equal chances to invest, or if necessary, to co-invest. But those who take that chance should then also get the benefit. However, we should not forget those areas where the investment case is much tougher, where at best only one network is sustainable from the economic perspective. So the current telecoms rulebook promoting competition has to be adjusted in a way that it provides incentives that all users, not only those living in urban centers, can benefit from the digital revolution. This in turn will make the digital market larger and ensures that nationwide services, such as those of e-health, are easily accessible to everyone. Yet, the current market regulation does not provide effective tools to address those circumstances. That is why we need to explore options to enlarge public authorities' toolbox, to incentivize operators to deploy their networks in the challenging areas. Dear colleagues, in the public consultations that we have launched, we acknowledge that in certain areas, primarily rural or semi-rural areas, private investments might not be expected on the basis of current regulatory incentives due to long-run cost structures and low and long-term returns on investment. We therefore look for your views on how to best address these challenge areas, providing incentives to the first mover towards very high capacity network provision that might not otherwise be provided. In addition, we need to consider wireless connectivity. As you all know, spectrum is an important input for the digital single market. And we have to find ways to streamline the allocation and technical harmonization process, which is currently extremely resource and time consuming. This is paramount if Europe, again, wants to be the starting point of a future wireless revolution. To address the current and future obstacles to the efficient use of spectrum, we should also address means to promote a more flexible access to and use of spectrum, including measures regarding shared access, as well as spectrum trading and leasing. Take, for example, wireless broadband, which is an increasingly important source of connectivity. We can no longer rely on a spectrum regime that was constructed in a time when connectivity needs were very different from those of today or of tomorrow. We will increasingly see services that can and should be provided on a pan-European basis. Satellite services are only the most obvious example. It makes no sense for services to be subject to 28 and more different authorization procedures across Europe, sometimes with conflicting requirements. With regard to a level playing field, we first need to identify the size of the alleged problem. We have to assess of how to level the playing field, possibly through simplification and regulating down rather than regulating up. So, what will be our overall approach to the telecoms reform? We all know the situation has changed since the demand for connectivity and data consumptions exploded. The situation will certainly be again different in the next 5 years. Therefore, we cannot afford wasting time and using rules and approaches developed for the voice telephony age. The challenge is to establish a future-proof framework supportive to the overall digital single market ambition. And this means that in the next decade we need to make top-class connectivity available, not only in urban areas, also in rural and less densely populated areas, making it available for all the SMEs, research centers and wider economy in general. To achieve this, I'm convinced that where we need common rules, we also need consistent application throughout the single market. The ambition of the review of the telecoms package, the telecoms regulatory framework, as regards the above-mentioned aspects, should also be adequately reflected in the revised and more efficient governance setup. And in this sense, I would like to thank BEREC, which in the past years has provided good value in terms of assisting the Commission, advising the Commission on important regulatory matters such as global roaming and net neutrality. The recent agreement on the TSM regulation showed that BEREC, despite the limitations of its current establishment, would continue to play an important role in this regard. In particular, next year, BEREC should provide adequate guidelines to NARs as regards the new net neutrality provisions. It's important that it's made clear to everybody that Europe has set a very high level of ambition as regards net neutrality, and it's committed to its swift implementation. Your BEREC's input for wholesale roaming market reform is also very valuable. Thus, we rely a lot on your detailed input coming in next month. It would also be positive if, in the context of the next telecoms review, we all approach these issues with an open mind, reflecting about what would be the best institutional structures for efficiently delivering the market and to European citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not my ambition to centralize functions that do not need to be centralized. And it does not mean increased Commission powers. I believe that here form follow functions. We just started, and an intensive year lies ahead of us. My ambition is that the proposals should be ready to be presented by the summer 2016 and implemented as soon as possible afterwards. So let us not forget, we have the task to develop a framework for the third decade of the 21st century. Hence, we need to apply the lessons learned so far, but doing so by looking into future. Our consultation is open until 7th of December this year, and we are looking forward to receiving good guidance from all stakeholders, so from you in special. We need a smart analysis to put in place smart regulation for the future telecoms sector. Thank you all for your attention, and let's continue to work together. Thank you.